How's it going, guys? Still May 19th, 12:31 a.m. here on the East Coast. So this last vlog for this evening, or you can call it vlog for today, technically, for the 19th, um, is going to be called. So it's gonna have to do with leadership, but it's mostly trust and cooperation. That again, I attribute this to Simon Sinek or Sinek. Um, so trust and cooperation are definitely needed to run an organization effectively. Whenever you don't have that trust and cooperation, people can't necessarily do their jobs effectively. And you have these different levels of leadership. Obviously, when somebody first initially joins their organization, you don't have that much trust in them to complete things, but several months to a year later, you build trust in them, and then you trust them to do what needs to be done without you having to micromanage. And I've witnessed some pretty, I would say, um, lackluster leadership tonight within the place I work when it comes to management. Um, One of the managers there slash owner was just how can I word this politely? Was just her leadership style is not effective for that type of person. And what makes it dangerous is that she thinks her leadership style is very suited for what do you call it, customer service in that industry, and it's really not. Whenever it comes to managing an organization, her leadership style, there's no trust and cooperation. She ends up being more of a hindrance to the operation than an actual help. Um, and it's just very difficult to deal with that type of leader. Whenever you have that type of leadership around, she's leading by authority. She's not leading by actual leadership, like influencing others by. I have a definition of leadership that's kind of tied into uh, the military or the army's definition of leadership. It's influencing other by providing them purpose, direction, and motivation to achieve the overall goals of a team or a group. And I don't think that one of the managers slash owners at the organization I work at does this. On the other hand, it's to where um, people don't act that way because there is a lack of trust and cooperation. People are afraid to act out in a certain way, and there needs to be open lines of communication with leadership. They should be able to come to you with issues about your leadership style, and if approached, you should be able to handle that as a leader. You shouldn't have outbursts or threaten to fire people or actually fire people, which is what I witnessed this evening, and it was just uh, very terrible style of leadership is what I could sum it up to. And there may be some people who disagree with me, and some people who agree with me. But just because you're older or you think you have more experience doesn't necessarily make you right. Um, and I tend to keep my mouth shut on a lot of things whenever it comes to that. But part of the reasons I do these vlogs is to be able to talk to people about the realities of things, how things are perceived in my opinion. And I'm a lot. Uh, I don't want to say I'm smarter intellectually, but I have a lot more intellect when it comes to doing certain things in life, and especially when it comes to leading people. I have much more experience than that. Even if you've had 50 or 100 people under you that you were doing that or managing, it doesn't necessarily mean that you were being a good leader. And what I was thinking about today as certain activities were going on at work is if you want a true reflection of your leadership, um, and this is something that I used to practice when I was in the military, that I didn't see very few people practicing. I got it from I would say an old wives' tale. that was handed down to me in the military. And then I'd have certain leaders uh, kind of do it, but I structured my own way to do it. But as you give feedback on a monthly basis, I would have to counsel soldiers and give them feedback on as to how they were performance. We'd review this month's performance compared to last month's performance, see if they met or reached their goals that they had set for the previous month, and then what are the new goals for this month or for the incoming month. And then after you get done with all that, and you get done with the reflection portion, I'd have them counsel me as a part of the back page of the counseling. I'd say, what can I do for you better as your leader? A lot of times there was nothing to be said, and I would always tell my peers or the soldiers beneath me, I have to be able to do something to better myself. And if you want a true reflection of yourself, sometimes in that setting, it tends to be a little daunting. Like they're afraid to tell you, hey, you're a piece of crap, I don't like you, or any of that. And they're afraid of that. So one of the ways to mitigate that is called like a blind assessment, is the best way I can describe it. But you get a third party or an uninterested party to come in and actually do a review of, management, so to speak, in civilian terms, or leadership. And you get them to come in, you give them a series of form of questions as to what they think about their leaderships and rate them on a certain scales, and then at the end you leave an open part for where they can write certain things about the organization, room for improvement, and things of that nature. You can nitpick at people, but I noticed in the civilian side of the sector, people don't do that. And it may be for a bunch of reasons. And some of the reasons I can think of off the top of my head is that they don't want to deal with the backlash, especially in smaller organizations. You can tell where some information comes from, but that way, if you get a third party, an uninterested third party to do that, you get some accurate feedback as to what your peers think about you. And I think that is very crucial. If you have an organization that is not being managed well or being mismanaged or micromanaged, because there's a lack of trust and a lack of cooperation within the organization. If you are the type of manager that micromanages and that is your style, why is it that you do that? Is it because you don't trust your peers or because you think you can do everything better yourself? If that's the case, then do everything better yourself. And if it's not the case, then trust your people to do the job that you've instructed them to do. Everybody, one person can't do everything. And when you work in an organization that requires more than one person, you need to have the trust and capability that what you're asking your people to do is that they're doing. And if they're not doing the job to your expectations, then sit down and talk to them about them. But so many times, over and over today, people they get upset with the amount of money they make. And I heard of this corporation, I can't think of the name, but they have a motto that if you mess up, it is the corporation's responsibility for one reason or another, and they will not fire you. They have a policy that they will not fire you. They will train you, they will repetitively train you over and over again until you get the concept, or you can decide that you're not a good fit for that organization. And I think that is such a great motto, because you're trying to build upon people that have the same interest in your organization. And if we're not all on the same page when it comes to growing an organization, then the organization will not grow. And I heard of these great stories within organizations that where managers they were forced to make cuts because let's say they lost 30% of their income overnight, so they would be forced to make cuts. But rather than do that, they implemented mandatory 30 days off per person that were there. And what happened from that is there was a willingness to cooperate, since management decided to keep everybody on and just implement what's called a furlough, I think they described it as, where everybody could take 30 days off a month, non-paid vacation. That would save the company more money than the anticipated layoffs would have done. And when they did it that way, they noticed that there was a camaraderie within the organization, to where some people who couldn't take as much time off didn't take as much time off, and the people who could afford more time off Let's say they, instead of the mandated 4 weeks, they would take 5 and let another person who couldn't take that much time off take 3. And there was this camaraderie that built up, because when you have people that work for a specific passion within your organization and you give them the opportunities, that you show them that you're interested and you're leading from the front. You're not just going to do what every typical organization does when it comes to tough times and lay people off. You're going to figure out ways to keep your people there, because it's not the amount of bodies here that are there, it's the amount of hearts that are there. And that's to quote somebody else. I don't know who to credit that to, but it's so true. It's the amount of hearts that are there following you, your passion, your organization, and you have to treat the people with the same dignity and respect that you're trying to ask them for. So I noticed a lot of lack of respect this evening, a lot of terrible leadership, and maybe I was a little hesitant to say something, because I felt like if I did, my head might be next on the chopping block, and it's a unsavvy way to run a corporation, and definitely not one that I'm going to stick around if it continues to present itself in that manner. And it just reminded me of, and I hate to go off on a tangent here, but it just reminded me of a little kid not getting their way, and stories starting to be twisted to favor the little kid. And it was just a very poor example of leadership on every avenue that I can imagine. It was just not what you would consider entrepreneurship in my eyes. Even if you've had 15, 30 years of good experience, that doesn't mean that experience translates to anything. If you have a bad day as a leader, your peers, your other people shouldn't be able to see that chip on your shoulder. And this is something I hold near and dear to my heart, that if I have a terrible day at work, you cannot tell. I will walk in through the door and you will not be able to see, because I don't bring my work home and I don't take my problems at home to work. And I think that that's where today started in a downfall for one of the managers there. And I just think it was a terrible way, and there was no trust and cooperation. If you have no trust with your employees for them to do their job coherently and in a manner that's expected of them, then you shouldn't have hired them in the first place. And it's a direct reflection of your lack of leadership that put them in that predicament. And if you have something to say to an employee or a person that you're managing, know how to be tactful. I've learned this the hard way. You cannot approach everybody the same way. I know that my soldiers told me that I was one of the best leaders that they had, but who knows if that was true or not. And I noticed that you can't approach every soldier the same way. You can be headstrong with some if that tactic works, but the people who are adversely headstrong, that tactic doesn't work. They end up folding and really imploding on themselves and just waiting the backlash on you, and then it's just a surmount of disrespect that succumbs from that. So you have to change your leadership style to the type of person that you're dealing with. And having one set type of leadership style for everybody is just not effective. And it's just piss poor leadership, if you ask me. And seeing what I saw tonight, it was just, like I said, the best way I can describe it, it was like a child not getting their way. And just because they have the opportunity to control things in a certain manner doesn't mean they're leading by authority. And sometimes authoritative leaders aren't leaders at all. They're just leading by authority. And that doesn't mean that that people will follow them. So you'll have people in lesser positions or way down below that will have a lot more followers than the leaders who lead by authority, because they're humble, they're kind, they express themselves in ways that really relate to people, and they're not and they're considerate. All these different nice, as I would call them, nice features are existent in leaders, and sometimes leaders, when they have to be tough, they do it in a way so it doesn't feel that way. And headstrong leaders, to me, in my opinion, are dwindling in today's day and age. Not that it's a much softer age, but it's a much more emotionally delicate age, and you really have to adapt to that. And if you are set in your old ways and you're just a headstrong type of leader, I've folded people up and told, put people in their place because what they think is right is it may have been right years ago, but it's not right today. And when you tell a person that they're not right and they can't take that type of criticism and they go off on a tangent, it just demonstrates their poor understanding of just to give you one basic leadership skill is listening. And if they can't do that effectively by listening to what your employees are telling you, and you have to ask for permission to speak, I mean, it's just like there's no trust on either side, no trust from the manager, no trust from the employee. So why would you continue to work for that type of organization? And I just think that it's a piss poor way to run an organization, and nothing good or nothing effective is going to come of it. And if you have this type of dilemma and you're as a leader, use those tools that I said. Get a third party uninterested person to come in and take a survey of your leadership, to where you don't know who said what, to where names can be put to their surveys. They just sum up a report for you and tell you either how terrible you're doing or how great you're doing. And it could go one of either ways. But I know if that were to happen within my organization, there'd probably be a lot of terrible things said. And that's a direct reflection of management and a direct reflection of ownership. And if people are too blind to see that, it's a matter of not being humble. And as many times as I say this, one of the most dangerous types of people is a person who thinks they are something or aren't something, and they truly are. Like a drunk person who thinks they can handle their alcohol. Like a person who thinks that they're humble and they're not. It's very dangerous and it's a very slippery slope. But I apologize for my grievances on here. It was just to see that in a caliber of a person who is decades older than me is just, to me, it's astonishing, and not something I would ever reflect onto my employees. And I was almost saddened to be in that situation because it's just, you don't expect that from what you would call leadership. And when you put your trust and your cooperation into an organization and what seems like falls apart in front of you, it's just debilitating to see that. And when they're so decades older than you, you expect more wisdom, more upstanding behavior, and when that doesn't happen, it's a reflection of old ideologies and a failure to adapt with the times. And it just saddens me to see that type of behavior because they can't see the lack of leadership within themselves, and that's a very dangerous place to be, because if you can't see your own faults, there's several different ways to, like I said, point out your faults. And if you think that you're doing a phenomenal job at being a leader, or at being a husband, or being a father, get a second opinion. Have somebody come in, as silly as it may sound, get your wife's or your significant other's honest opinion. Have them write it down to you, what you can do to improve. It's one of the most humbling things that you can do. And you have all these people in the world that say that they're humble. And how many of them take the time to reflect on themselves, on how they're behaving, how they're treating other people, if they're treating them with the dignity and respect that they deserve to be treated with, or if they're not. And if you just get people's feedback on that, I think it would describe to you a lot of what you think you may know versus what is actually going on. And then you have people that actually take pride in behaving a certain in a certain negative manner, like it's prideful to them, like it's a good thing to be headstrong, or it's a good thing, or you need this aspect to run a business. And if that were the case, again, everybody would do it if there was one simple set of rules to do business, or one simple set of rules to run an organization. The reason there's a variety of ways is because of many different ways work. And having those different ways just means you have to cater to different approaches. Different approaches calls for different times, and different times calls for different measures, and no one thing works for everybody. And like I've said before, if it did, everybody would do it, and do it repetitively all the time if the same thing consistently worked all the time. But things change on a daily basis, and you have to adapt to those changes in order to be an effective leader. And if you're not leading your organization effectively, essentially you'll lead it to its own collapse. It'll be your fault and your fault only, and you fail to see it if you don't figure out a way to reflect before the chaos has ensued. So again, I was talking about actions that occurred at my job this evening that I was a little let down by, and I think it was piss poor leadership, um, a reflection of that, people not owning up. And if you truly want to get to the bottom of, if you think you're the most dynamite manager, again, I can't say this enough, get a second opinion. Bring in a party, even if it costs you a couple bucks to get it done. Bring in a party to see, and you'll notice some of it's one of the most sought after strategies. And in the military, they do it, I think, once a quarter or biannually, I think, where they'll bring in a third party, uninterested, from outside of your unit to come in and get a reflection of what they call unit morale, is what they call it. And they want to see how things are going on within the organization, and then they compile everything together from all the soldiers, and then they present it to leadership and say, this is how you're doing, this is how what's going good, this is what isn't going good, this is where you're failing, this is where you're succeeding. I suggest you make changes here, here, and here in order to make your organization better. You can do what you want with your information, but if you're having trouble leading your soldiers, these are the particular reasons why. If you improve on these things, then I'm sure good things will come from there. And if not, we'll reassess and on said date and take another reassessment and see if the advice that has been given to you has proved effective or ineffective, so you can adjust and readjust to get to an end state that all parties are happy with. And I think that's the right approach to take. But if you're having problems within an organization, really take it back, take it a step back, and hear from your employees, because two things are very very important whenever you're running a business. It's the employees that are working for you and the customers you have coming in through the door. But if you're not taking care of both equally, your business will, I think, in my opinion, will go to crap. You have to take care of your good employees exceptionally well. You have to pay them well. You have to take care of them. Give them a reason to be there, because some employees could be at working at a dime a dozen locations. Why is your location any different? Why should they stick there? It's because you're loyal to them and they're loyal to you. So show them that loyalty in a form that's acceptable to them. And if you can't afford to pay them more, then you better be the best manager that they've ever seen. You got to offer them something to be there. And there's only so many things you can offer them besides monetary contributions. And if you can't have those things, then sometimes you got to offer them a better working environment. But if you're not offering any of them either one of those things, then why should they stick around? They could just go to another place to put up with the same environment for more money. And that's truly what it comes down to. So I'm sorry to harp on this one. Again, this has to do with trust and cooperation within your organization to strive to be a better leader. And seeing what I saw tonight is just a reflection of piss poor leadership from the top down. And it's unfortunate if they don't realize it and if they don't make changes. But seeing what I saw today just gives me a different perspective on the managers that I thought I was working with. It's truly not the managers that, or one of the managers that I thought I was working with is not the type of person that I thought they were. On the contrary, if they have a bad day, they have a terrible day. And you should never, ever take that out on your employees. I even saw stories changing to benefit the manager, and it's unreal. when things don't go somebody's way, what they'll do to make it seem like the other person's fault when they need to take a good look at themselves to see if they're the issue. And again, I'm glad I saw what I saw, and I hope you guys can take away from this experience and learn something just as I did. That not all managers are great. If you're not being taken care of in your organization, then maybe you need to part ways with them, and that's okay too. Um, as I've mentored people before and recently who told me, I could be working somewhere else for more money. Well, first thing I asked them is, have you applied? No. Well, then you should. Because if you can, even though, let's say, I'd be favored to have a person with me in my organization, but I can't do nothing for them because I'm not in that position of power, and they have an opportunity, even if I want them at the organization where I'm currently at, it's not fair to that person because I would be holding them back. And I'm at my particular organization now, or business now, because I have a particular interest in it, and I've always wanted to see this side of it. But seeing both the good and the bad helps build the bond of business, and you take from the good and the bad leadership. So if you're ever given the opportunity to run or to step in the shoes of the leader that you had to replace, you know what works and what doesn't, and how to cater to people and employees both equally favorably. And believe it or not, employees are the backbone of a business, not the customers. Customers are not the backbone of a business. Employees are. They're what keeps the business going. Because if your employees don't show up, it doesn't matter how many customers you have. The business cannot run. And that's something that I think poor leaders don't recognize. You need your employees to be able to run a business, even on a small magnitude and even at a great magnitude. You need your employees there to run a business effectively. And if you could do it all yourself, then I suggest, and you don't want anybody working for you, then find a business that caters to you. If not, know that you have to have employees working for you and you have to take care of your employees. I would say sometimes even better than your customers, because employees make the business run, not necessarily customers. Customers are a byproduct of what you got going on, and sometimes the why as to why you're running your business. But employees who believe what you believe in are going to offer you more and bend for you more than any customer will. Sometimes, in my experience, some customers may gripe about certain things, and employees tend to put themselves through the ringer to try and make customers happy. Um, so there's sometimes they put themselves through certain unhappiness just to get to an end state that makes everybody happy. And that is something to notice about your employees. And that's why you should take care of your employees, even more so that you should take care of your customers, because customers are also very important, and they can be a lifeline to your business. But again, if you need employees to help run the business, then you're kind of up the creek if you're not taking care of your employees. So again, there's a lot of good information in this one, and just stuff that I pieced together as the night has gone on, and thoughts that I had, and I wanted to put this vlog up as all the information was fresh in my mind. And so you guys can get a realistic gist of the insides and outsides of businesses, and what goes on inside of them, and how everything may seem fine on the surface, but there's really a lot more going on underneath that some people don't tend to grasp, and leaderships fail to realize. So I'll leave it at that for this last vlog for today. This one ran a little bit on the long side, 28 minutes, but there was a lot of information to put out there and a lot to reflect upon, and it really gave me an opportunity to discuss a couple different things, and I hope this video makes it to people that need to see it so they can understand. If you want a good reflection of yourself, really get some feedback from the people that you interact with to see what kind of person you are, what type of leader you are. If you think you're this dynamite leader, it has taken me down a peg or two whenever I don't get all excellence. If I get somebody that has some sort of issue with me in my previous leadership experience, I always try my best to put my best foot forward from then on out and pay attention to even the smallest detail of deficiencies that I may show, because I want to be the best leader that I can be in any situation. Also, one last fact here is don't discredit younger people just because of their age. It's one of the age biases that I know exist within society today, based on the educational experience that I've gotten at wonderful universities. That there is age bias, and it goes both ways. And we tend not to pay attention to older people because they seem like they don't know what they're talking about, or it doesn't apply to us today. But also younger people, and this is a bias I struggle with, that people tend not to listen to me because they think that I'm too young to offer the advice that I'm offering. And I urge you to not be a part of that age bias and realize that some people may have more experience than you in a particular field. I think that interesting conversation. I just play out certain things in my head, but I think that if I were to try and approach my managers, they'd probably think that I don't have the experience that they have. And they may be right when it comes to running a business, but I have so much more leadership experience that than they could possibly manage. And even if they've managed 40, 50 people, were you actually leading them? Did they follow you? That's a huge difference. I believe leaders have a following, and sometimes managers don't have a following, or leading by authority doesn't necessarily mean that these people will follow you. So I have a certain amount of experience when it comes to that, that may not, that they may not think is applicable. They just may not know that I have that experience. I'm also very quite conservative whenever it comes to describing my experiences, and it isn't till I have to say what I have to say that I say it. I tend to keep my mouth shut whenever other things like this are going on in the workplace, because I feel like they just may have that typical age bias that I've encountered along the way. But don't discredit somebody else's leadership, even though you think you are all high and mighty on your high horse, that you have managed maybe more people than I have. It doesn't mean that the people that you've managed would follow you into the woods for whatever reason. To go to go pick some weeds, they wouldn't follow you to the edge of your driveway. But I've had people follow me to the ends of this earth for unknown reasons, even unknown to me. You still have to display that leadership, that you're going to get them through it. So don't discredit the younger people. It's something that I used to do all the time. The new officers that I would come into contact with, and you have to appreciate them for their college experience. And even though their leadership isn't on an experience level like you may have, they still can offer something different to the table, and you have to be open to that. So, again, that'll be it for today's vlog. I'm sorry this one ran a little long, but I'm sure you guys enjoyed it because of the realness of it and the timeliness of it. This was an event that happened earlier tonight. So, again, I appreciate you guys watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.